Hello, friends. This is Mike Williams of the Sage of Quay Radio Hour. My friend and colleague, Pamela Tartar, recently passed away after battling a long-term illness. I did a number of shows with Pamela going back to 2014 before her illness prevented her from continuing her podcast and guesting on shows. She was a genuine and honest voice in the pursuit of truth. She was a fighter, and she will be missed. The following show with Pamela is from November 2014. I came across the show in her Pure Momentum Network archives, which still contain her podcasts. Even though this show was recorded 3 years ago, it is very interesting how the very same issues persist today. And so without further ado, here's the show with Pamela.
This is Pamela Tartar, and you're listening to Factor 9 on Pure Momentum Network. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Now, today, my special guest is Michael Williams. Mike is a personal friend and colleague of mine, and I so appreciate him giving us his time. He's a very busy man. He has Sage of Quay blogspot.com, and then he also has laboroflovemusic.com, where you can get his music that he's written and played, and it's just wonderful music that is truly a labor of love, and you can sure tell it. And he also has YouTubes for his talks, and he does interview people every week, and you can certainly go to sageofquayblogspot.com, and you can see what all he does have there with the variety of speakers and people that he interviews. So welcome, Michael Williams to Factor 9 Pure Momentum Network.
Well, thank you, Pamela. Thank you for having me come back.
Well, I just so appreciate you coming, and we just have such a good time when we talk personally, and we always say, gosh, we should have recorded this. This would be a really good show. So we just thought we'd actually do it and record it today, and we'll talk about some current issues. Now, let's begin with Ebola. So what do you know about Ebola? What are your awarenesses personally, and anything that you'd like to talk about having to do with Ebola?
Well, I think Ebola it's very similar, if not exactly the template that they used, Pamela, going back to 2001 when we had 9/11 and we had the anthrax scare.
Yeah.
And so to me, I'm not going to say Ebola is not real. And the reason why I'm not going to say that is because the U.S. government has patents on Ebola. So something is being done in a lab someplace to weaponize the virus. Now, that being said, everything that we've seen over the last 4 to 6 weeks on Ebola, in my view, and I said it in the beginning and I'm sticking to my guns now, is it's nothing more than a scare tactic. It's more of the chaos that the powers that be continue to put in place, because when they have chaos, they can create their order. And when there's chaos, it puts most of the population into fear mode. And when people are fearful, they have paralysis. They don't critical think and they don't free think. And if people would just take a step back and take a look at the fact that they have been talking about wanting to have their quote unquote pandemic for over a decade now, talking about maybe even 20 years. And we started, remember Legionnaire's disease, SARS, swine flu, H1N1, bird flu. Now we have Ebola. So at the end of the day, I think where they're going with this, it's problem, reaction, solution. And the problem is Ebola. The reaction is, oh my God, save us, government, save us, politicians. Solution, vaccines. So I think where this is going is mandatory vaccines. And we saw that with anthrax, by the way. When we had the anthrax scare going back, like I said, back in 2001, what ultimately happened was anthrax vaccine was created, and today our soldiers are, they're getting my understanding is they're getting the anthrax vaccine multiple times. Virtually every time they have to go back and do a tour of duty, they get injected with the vaccine. So, at the end of the day, it's about money. It's about forced vaccinations. And, there's not really nothing new. It's the same template they've been using for so long.
Right. And, Mike, one of the things I always say is the opposition has it so easy. They don't have to create anything new or make anything new. They just use the same old thing, which is what you're saying. They don't have to create anything new. Well, they
No.
can't create. I keep using that word. They make something new. They don't have to, because the old stuff always works every time. And
Yeah.
you would think, oh my gosh, this has happened before and this isn't right. But it just takes so long for people to wake up. Now, what I know about Ebola that I would like to add to your wise words, and I agree with everything you've said, is that Africa has more cell phones than North America has, almost double. And there are over 200 million internet connections in Africa. And yet, where are the thousands of pictures or tweets or texts coming from Africa about Ebola? That is missing.
Right, because it's not real. It's a fabricated disaster, fabricated event. That's why.
Right. And I have a couple of articles here on the table beside me that go through and prove that this is true. Because in all the springs and the marches that we've had, everybody has kept us updated through the internet, and we've known that this and this and this is happening. Well, on Ebola, we don't have any of that happening, and so there's a reason for it. Now, I did also get an article that said that came from Ghana, which is where they tried to start this up, but the officials in Ghana would not participate because they said, no, there isn't an Ebola outbreak here. It's not true. And so they wouldn't play along. So they had to move from Ghana to Sierra Leone and, some other places in Africa. But Africa, the continent of Africa, has been so attacked. And of course, we know that Sierra Leone supplies almost all, if not all, the diamonds for the world.
Right.
And it's
about resources.
Yes.
Yes.
It is. And then, of course, in Nigeria, they want the oil that's there. So the opposition forces to all life, as I term it, want all the resources from everything and from everyone, and that's how they go about it. Now, yes, they want to give us the vaccines, and they say it's going to be mandatory. I don't know. They tried to whip this up with bird flu. They tried to whip it up with SARS. They tried to whip it up with swine flu, and those things just kind of fizzled out. You remember those?
Absolutely.
And so now I think that those were kind of like practice runs, because they do practice runs, And this one may be the one. I don't know whether it is or not. But, that nurse that was diagnosed has blatantly, in your face, refused to be quarantined. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
And she went right on a bicycle ride with her boyfriend or fiance or whoever he is. And she knows that every move she makes is on the media.
Right.
Because, they hang around her all the time. And because they're part of the hyping of this thing. And so that's a good piece of information, because that nurse is actually a CDC employee. And we don't know whether she's got it or not. They say she does, but she doesn't act like she does.
No. And what they're doing is they're putting all these stories out there. They want to see how much they can push the envelope and how easily people will cave to being vaccinated.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. I mean, they want to see if people are just going to put their hands up and say, yes, I surrender. I give you my freedom, my sovereignty, inject me, vaccinate me. And you're right. They put these trial runs out there, and they want to take the temperature of the masses. They want to see where they're at. Unfortunately, I keep seeing polls where people are like, yeah, well, if there's a vaccine, I'll go get one.
Yeah, I know.
It's really disturbing because people are not thinking. They're really
No,
not thinking, and they have no idea what freedom is about.
I know. Well, freedom comes with responsibility.
Exactly.
And one of the weapons used against us by the opposition to all life is victimization. You're a victim. You don't have to be responsible for yourself. Somebody else will do that for you.
Right.
You've been victimized, so you just lay there and let somebody else do it. But I do want to mention that I am very encouraged by the numbers of people who are refusing vaccines for putting their children into school. And there's all kinds of legal things going on, and the government is dancing fast and changing the forms and all this, and the parents are keeping up with it. So I'm very encouraged, and it's not going to be as easy today to vaccinate us as it would have been 5 years ago. More people are awake to the game.
Well, if you remember the timing on the Ebola crisis, it came at the exact moment when the CDC was in big trouble because of the whistleblower that came out
Right,
about the
right,
mumps, measles, and rubella vaccine, that it was definitely contributing to autism.
right. Absolutely.
So to me, the timing, somebody can call it coincidence, but
No.
it's classic.
Well, those of us who study the esoteric side of things know that there are no accidents.
Right.
There are none. And even the word coincidence, if you break it down, it can be coincide. So even if you want to call it a coincidence, it's a matter of things coming together and coinciding in a very organized way.
Right.
So there are no accidents. Now, the Ebola czar said a lot to us about this as well, because there wasn't somebody there that is up on anything medical, number one.
I know.
Or anything having to do with viruses. I mean, nothing along that line. And I'll tell you who's really good to talk about this, and it's Michael Savage, because he does have a PhD in, I think it's viral medicine. I'm not sure. But he is so much more educated than anybody that's out there talking, including the czar, which I absolutely and totally hate the word czar. It is so tyrannical to me.
Yeah, it's authoritative.
Just the term. It is.
Right.
And we never had that until this particular president came around. We never had anyone try to use that term in America in a leadership position. But this Ebola czar, number one, doesn't show up at any meetings. And number two, he's a lawyer. Now, why would you need a lawyer having to do with Ebola? Because they're expecting legal issues from this, and they're going to be ready. That's my take on it.
Well, I mean, that could very well be. On the other hand, everybody basically in politics is either a lawyer or somehow affiliated with the law profession.
Yeah, you're right.
Right? Because they have their allegiance to the Bar Association. It's not to the Constitution of this country.
You're right.
But when I heard about this Ebola czar, I mean, first of all, it's ridiculous. We have an Ebola czar.
Right.
And he has no medical background whatsoever. I mean, the first thing that struck me was that, this just proves the whole thing's a hoax. Because if it was as severe and a crisis, as large a crisis as they were trying to make it out to be, then you would be damn sure to make sure you had somebody in that position that was very well versed medically, viruses, biologicals, and so on. And so, it's a big, and you and I have spoken about this so many times, Pamela. It's just a big charade. It's a big puppet show.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And one thing, if you just process a little bit of this information, people, you'll get it. If you go to bring a dog into another country or a cat, it gets quarantined for sometimes 3 months.
Yeah.
And your dog has nothing. You've got papers from their vet here. But it doesn't matter. They want to do that, all right, for a pet. But yet human beings that are supposedly exposed are just running around loose. that doesn't make sense now. That means that they either, number one, it isn't real, or number two, they want to spread it. There aren't many other options there.
Well, what they have to come forward with, if they want to be able to prove their case with Ebola, is they have to come forward with actual facts. I haven't seen any facts yet. You know, they keep qualifying it to make it larger than life by saying somebody has Ebola-like symptoms. It basically says you have flu or cold symptoms. And that's how they try to make it larger than it really is. Oh, you have a cough? Oh, did you vomit? Oh, you're sneezing? Oh, you're running a fever. You have Ebola-like symptoms. No, maybe I just have a cold, or maybe I just have the run-of-the-mill flu. And by the way, you know, I think the CDC's own numbers say that in any given year that, you know, there's thousands of deaths that come from flu and pneumonia.
Right.
Thousands.
There are. Yeah. Yeah.
And
true.
So that's not declared a crisis. How come the flu and pneumonia is not declared a crisis if 5,000, 10,000, 15, 20,000, their numbers show up to 50,000 people may die due to flu and pneumonia, yet that's not a crisis. We don't have a flu czar. You know? I mean, so you have to put it into perspective. I mean, the whole thing is just so goofy, and it's very disturbing when I run into people who are just running around, flailing their hands and just in crisis mode. You know, they're wringing their hands and they're worried. Oh my God, I don't want to have Ebola. I don't want to be bleeding from every orifice. I mean, the whole thing just makes my head hurt.
Now, you know that Alex Jones has been talking about how they're hiding cases.
Yeah.
Well, the hospital where I'm going to have my kidney transplant in Kansas City just announced, like in the last week, that they had an Ebola case, which was very worrisome to me. All right. They had a case. Within hours, it was announced that, oh, this wasn't, well, first, let me back up. It went from the emergency room to the ICU. You don't just get to go to the ICU. You have to be in some trouble to get to an ICU. All right, because they don't have that many ICU rooms. All right, so this person has Ebola. They're in the ICU, and it's announced, and everybody knows about it. All right, within an hour or two, they made the announcement that, oh, they made a mistake. This is malaria. Yeah. All right, malaria and Ebola are east and west. Malaria is not hemorrhagic. There's not people bleeding all over the place with malaria. That's not what it is. But Ebola is. And I got that from Michael Savage, and he knows what he's talking about. He has a degree in this area. And so the next thing, and this is within an hour after the last announcement. So we're talking about 3 hours into the announcement that they have an Ebola patient. All of a sudden, this patient has disappeared and nobody knows where it is. And the doctors that treated this person were told not to worry about it, that everything was okay, just to move on, nothing to see here.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I'm sharing that is I have a reason to be concerned about that, because they could call me any minute to go for my transplant if they get one that matches my blood.
Right.
And that's very concerning to me, but it does appear that if it is real, they are disappearing the bodies or the people.
Well, like I mentioned before earlier, it is real because we know that the U.S. government has patents on Ebola. So, I don't know. Again, this is just surmising on my part, but I don't know whether this is just they are, from a very isolated perspective, putting this out there to see what the response is, to see how the people who are infected respond.
Yeah.
To see if they infect people, how well the vaccines or the treatment works. I hate to sound so conspiratorial, but you cannot put anything past these people. They are lunatics.
Oh, well, we know that.
Yeah.
Because, number one, we have Tuskegee,
right,
which everybody should know about that, where they on purpose infected with syphilis and let these men not know it, and then go and infect all these people, infect all their families and all these people. Okay, we know that happened. within the last 24 months, and I'm not good about nailing things down, Hillary Clinton apologized that we did testing on children in South America. Do you remember that?
Yes.
So, of course, they're able to do this. And of course, they're not going to tell us for a couple of years. But now they're getting more and more blatant about coming out in the open with what they've done, because it's almost as if they are depending on the fact that the American people are so entrained and so asleep. And when I say asleep, I mean groggy. You know, like when you first wake up and you're not really awake yet, but you're kind of awake. That's what I mean, groggy. And they depend on that so they can just say things and do things in the open now, and it just kind of goes by. Well, there's enough of us awake that are not groggy at this moment that can say, oh no, I caught that. And so, of course, they're capable of doing this. Absolutely, they're capable of spreading it. And I do know they have a patent, and I do have that. I took a screenshot of how long ago they got it and what the number is and all of that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's real. But I mean, is it real that we have the pandemic that they're saying that we're just on the verge of having? And I agree with you that fear is a huge part of everything that happens. Huge, because when a human being operates out of fear, every choice that is made when you're in a state of fear is not in your best interest.
That's right.
And if you think that they, with quotes around it, don't know this, then you are groggy because they absolutely depend on that fact, you know.
Well, that's their ace in the hole, is fear.
Oh yeah, it works
Absolutely.
every time.
It does.
And you talked about it paralyzes. It does paralyze people, and it's like, well, if they can get us full spectrum dominance in fear, then we don't know which way to go. You know, am I afraid of this, or am I afraid of this, or am I afraid of this, or that, or the other? And it's a full circle. Where do you look? There's nowhere to look that there isn't fear. They keep that layered and pumped up and going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every day. And they have to have that because the opposition feeds on that energy. And someone once said in the entertainment field that you know, any news is good news if they spell your name right.
Yeah.
So they feel like any fear is good fear as long as people are afraid, you know?
Yeah, it's fear and confusion. Fear and confusion, because even for the folks that have figured it out and are questioning it, what they'll do is they will throw additional curveballs out there so that you'll go chase the ball down another road or another path type of thing. So, you know, they have it very well covered is the point they're trying to make. I mean, so you have, the majority of the folks that buy the thing hook, line, and sinker right out of the chute because they're watching Fox News and CNN and MSNBC and all the other network news stations that are just putting the fear mongering out there. And then you have those that are critically thinking and taking a step back and saying, okay, hold on a second now. Take a step back and let's get a better perspective. And so they know they have those people out there like you and me and others. And so then they throw other stuff out there. And there's more disinformation that is disseminated. And so you go, chasing it down to go validate and, make sure you've got, things understood. But the thing is, when you and I do that, it takes up a lot of time.
Oh, and the energy we use doing this.
Right.
Yeah. And we need to be doing other things. And then there's 5 things out there that we need to research right now to find out, is it true? How much of it is true? What do I need to do about it? What can we do? Oh, yeah. It's very time consuming. And believe me, that's not an accident either, because there are no accidents.
Exactly.
So that's why they have so many layers of things, and that's why they have so many troops working under them to keep things going. Well, I think we've pretty much covered Ebola, unless you've got something else to say about it.
Well, the only thing is, I remember a quote from Franklin D. Roosevelt, who said that in politics, nothing happens by accident. If it
Yeah,
happens, you can bet it was planned that way. So there you go.
that's true. That's absolutely true. And I know that from dealing with the esoteric side of things, I absolutely know that everything is connected. And from my Native American spirituality, Grandmother Spider teaches us you touch the web, the whole web moves, no matter where you touch it.
Yeah.
The whole web moves. Now, if we're distracted, which we are very, very distracted, then we may not process things the way we should. And so, again, that is counted on because people are so myopic that they think, oh, yeah, this just affects me over here. This doesn't, this doesn't matter. And that's kind of how that nurse is acting. This is just me, and I don't care what anybody says. I'm just going to do anything I want. Well, even if she was playing the game, she would at least act like she's in quarantine. But they want to make sure that we know that she is not honoring quarantine.
Yeah.
So there's nothing done by accident. You're absolutely correct. And it's not just someone in the esoteric side of things speaking. One of our presidents actually said that. Thank you for bringing that up. All right, I'd like for us to move forward to talk about the Muslims and the religion of Islam and the issue that we have here in America and all over Europe with what's going on with the Muslim invasion, I call it. Would you like to begin with that, or do you want me to begin?
Well, all I'll say is that we talked a little bit about this before we got started with the show. And this is my personal take on it, Pamela, is I do not put all Muslims and those that follow Islam into one bucket and say they're just all these evil people. What we have here is a religion like Christianity was at one time that has been radicalized, and it's been radicalized intentionally in order to keep the Crusades alive. And that's what you and I talked about earlier. We have the Christian nation, quote unquote Christian nation of the United States, which was really founded by Freemasonry folks. And we have Islam. And so we have the Christians versus Islam. And that's the whole crusade dynamic. So that is continuing to be played out. And unfortunately, many, many, many people don't do their research. They don't do their homework. They don't know anything about history. So even as I'm talking about the Crusades, they don't have a clue about what I'm talking about. But
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you understood it, even if you just watched a couple of documentaries on it, you would understand that what they're doing today is they've brought it back. Not that it really ever left, but they've actually made it more in our face, if you will, over the last, I want to say, well, since 2001, since 9/11, where
Yes.
they really resurrected the Crusades. And this is really what's going on today. I mean, in my view. I don't know if you have a different view.
Mhm. Well, I agree with everything you've said, but I also recognize that the Muslims that are not involved in this radicalization should be standing up and calling down the ones that are and they are not. And take my word, I was reared a Christian. I am not a Christian now. I am anti-religion now. I know that religions are absolutely the opiate of the people. People are so dazed they can't even function. But I do know that we've got a real issue here in the United States and across Europe with Muslims because they are very demanding. They are not tolerant. And we even have big corporations like Lowe's and Home Depot, and I'm getting a list together of others because I want to boycott them and encourage others to boycott them, that since March of 2014 have been giving out sensitivity training for their employees on how to deal with customers who are Muslims. Now that's incorrect because I have worked all my life and I've never had a sensitivity training on anything. I've never had to say, oh, well, you can tell this person's a Christian, so be sure and don't say this, and be sure and do this, and be sure and act this way, and whatnot. That has never happened. It is happening now. It has happened since March. I watched a video yesterday in Detroit, where the largest Muslim community is. It was extremely disturbing. There was supposed to be a kind of like a fair outside with tents and everything of Muslims wanting to give out information and answer questions about their religion. And yet a camera was brought in and a man tried to ask one question, and he was accosted. They got the police involved in it. And I watched the whole tape, and it was extremely violent from the Muslim side. And they had teenagers involved in this. He was being shoved. His camera was being grabbed and pushed. They were being talked to badly. And he said, look, this is the United States of America. I have freedom of speech. Your sign says ask questions. I'm trying to ask a question.
Right.
He was very calm. And do you know what was said? An older Muslim said, this is not the United States of America. This is the future Islamic State. Now, that is something we need to take note of. I am anti-religion, I will repeat again, but I have never heard a Christian group say, we're going to take over and we're going to bring our law into effect here, or Buddhists or anybody else. The only one that I have heard say this is the Muslims.
Yeah, and that's that radicalized component I was talking about, Pamela. You know, I'm not saying that that it's not a problem. It is a problem because Sharia law unto itself is not only just the religious aspects contained in the Quran, but it's also governance, it's jurisprudence, it's
Yes.
right. That's the thing. That's what people don't understand. It is a governance that is in the Quran. So, but that is a problem. That's a problem because what these folks are not understanding is that when you come into a country, you need to assimilate into society and you need to abide by the laws and the Constitution. Otherwise, what we're going to have is we're going to have chaos. We cannot have 2, 3, 4 different systems of governance, of laws, of court systems, and so on. And but this is all done, Pamela, like you and I mentioned earlier. This is all done intentionally. Even the person saying this is brainwashing and indoctrination that has been instilled so that it contributes toward the breakdown of society. It's the breakdown of the culture within this country. Now, I'm not saying these things to be anti-Muslim. I'm not anti-Christian. What I'm saying is anytime you start to impose your belief systems that strongly, what you're doing is you are disrupting the laws and the existence of a country, of a community, whatever it may be, to be a country or an area that has a rule of law.
Well, we do have a huge problem.
Yeah.
And one of the proofs of that is that our judicial system is now considering allowing certain communities, like they've got in Detroit,
Right.
to govern by Sharia law, which means that the men can throw acid in their women's face, which means that they can kill people and stone them and chop their hands off and all this. I'm 100% against it. I do not want this in my country. I am an American. I have tolerated and tolerated and tolerated to the point that now the Muslims are using it against us. They are looking at us as weak and as prey for this predator. And when you tell me that this is no longer the United States of America, but it is going to be very soon an Islamic State, you have a real issue. And what I read, what their information that they're given from their leaders in Islam, and it says, go in there with your best and brightest and be peaceful. The next thing you do is you start pushing the limits and making demands. They're doing it. They are people, and most of them are on welfare, by the way. We are even giving welfare and other benefits that our vets cannot get, our warriors cannot get, to Muslims who have several wives, and they collect money on up to 5 wives. Now, this is horrific, and this is a threat to my country. And I want to make it clear, I am against it. I don't want them here. They don't belong here if they are not going to assimilate. And if they cannot assimilate, but they must take over, we've got a problem and we need to get rid of it. And that's not, I'm not speaking for Mike, I'm speaking for Pamela Tartar. And I do use my own name, by the way, people. So we are not ready, just as people are not ready to deal with psychopaths, because we consider that everyone is a human being and they're thinking like us. These people are not thinking like us, just like a psychopath is not thinking like us. They are not thinking like us, and the next step has already begun, which is the violence. The violence. And I heard on Fox, let's see, this week sometime, a video that they had vetted out at least 17 locations of jihad training camps in the United States of America, one not too far from me. And the list that they were working on said that there were 31 known, but they only had time to vet out 17. So we have a real issue. You know, when the other people, like from Italy and Ireland and all of these people that came to assimilate and make our melting pot, there was never terrorist set up places that were training to attack us set up anywhere in our country. They were thrilled and grateful and thankful to be somewhere where they could work and get something for their work. They weren't here demanding something. We have got Muslims demanding their own grocery stores who are living off of working people and demanding grocery stores so that they don't have to buy groceries in the same place where pork is sold. Well, I'm diabetic. Do I need my own store where they don't sell anything with sugar in it? Let's be sane here. These people are not sane, and they have taken our tolerance to be a weakness, and they're using it against us, and we had better stop being so tolerant. When you know somebody is the enemy, you better treat them as if they're an enemy and not as if they're like you.
Well, what you have, Pamela, is it's a template. It's a script that's been used many times over. We can go back to, as an example, Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky.
Yes.
Right? So what we're seeing here is, again, what I mentioned before, is it's the intentional dissolving and the breakdown of the societal and the cultural construct. And it's all subversion from within. Now, the thing is, how could they get away? How could anybody get away with making those types of demands? Forget about whether they're Muslims or whoever it may be. How do they get away with it? Is it really the tolerance of the American people, or is it the abdication of responsibility of the people that are supposedly our leaders? Because what makes me laugh is we have this radicalism going on. They keep talking about that they have these jihad camps and their training and everything else. In the meantime, we're flooded with all kinds of news that says that the NSA can basically read my watch from Mars with the technology that they have. And we see SWAT teams going in and, 10, 12 law enforcement SWAT team members going in so that they can go arrest a 74-year-old man who owes $80,000, or a SWAT team going in and breaking down the door and winding up in the wrong house, which apparently we should get those guys a GPS.
Right, I know.
Right, but
how often do they do that too?
They do that a lot. I mean, more than you would ever think that they should. But my point being is that you can see the resources are all focused in the wrong direction. It's in the wrong direction. And my point is that these groups that are being indoctrinated and entrained are being allowed to be indoctrinated. They're allowed to continue this subversive agenda. This is all by design. It's being allowed to happen because they won't be prosecuted. They won't be arrested. They won't be called on the carpet. They're allowed to have these things to continue down the path. And why is that? Well, the reason is because that's how the people that are in power, the misleaders, this is their agenda. And that's what people have to understand. So, again, you and I spoke a lot before the show, but what we need to do, in my view, is, yes, we do have to understand these things like radical Islam, and we have to understand all the other issues that are taking place, which are undermining the country. But the real question is, who's pulling the levers behind the curtain? Because none of this stuff would happen. None of this stuff would get traction if we were able to pull the curtain back and see the great Oz. In other words, get right down to the folks, the very few at the top of the pyramid that have designed this subversion.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I'm totally committed to that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we can't allow this to happen.
I agree.
Americans are not ready for this kind of thing. We have always felt safe in our country, and we do not now. I listened to a video of a congressman having a town meeting in Pennsylvania, and most of the people that were there were 50 and older. And the two people that spoke from the group were over 70 years old. And they were talking about how we didn't have any leadership and somebody needed to do something. And why was Congress sitting on their hands and doing nothing? So we know that, and people are awakening to this. But at the same time, we have a real issue with this. In the state of Florida, a Muslim school, what are their preachers called?
Imams.
The leader there raped a lot of children, and one of them was an 11-year-old that had to have surgery because it was so violent.
Yeah. And
do you know that a judge is letting him off because of Sharia law?
Well, see, that's my point. That makes my point. This is where we have a breakdown of upholding the law. If somebody comes in with that kind of crime and he goes into court and the judge allows the defense to be, well, in Sharia law, it's okay.
Yeah.
Then we have a big problem.
That's why I'm trying to show this.
Yes.
That's why I'm talking about it right now, Mike. Yep. It's because we have a massive problem, and the American people are prey to this because we're too tolerant. And our tolerance has been taken advantage of, and we can no longer afford to be tolerant. We have to shine the light on these things, tell our friends about it, tell our relatives about it, and begin protecting ourselves. All at the same time, realizing we have this huge leadership problem, massive leadership problem.
Well, we have a massive leadership problem because they're not supposed to be leaders. This is the thing. It's designed. The two older folks that stood up and said, hey, how come Congress or our representatives or our senators aren't doing anything? Well, it's because they're not supposed to do anything. They're not representing you. They represent a corporation. I don't want to get, down that rabbit hole, but
that's true.
That's what people have to understand. They are not representing you. It's a masquerade. And so instead of sitting there wringing your hands and saying, well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the voting booth and I'm going to push the lever for a new body to put in the Oval Office or to put in this particular seat in this district for the House of Representatives or whatever it may be, you have to start understanding that the entire system has been subverted so badly that it has no semblance of what it is supposed to be doing. And that was gone a long, long time ago. And people have to start thinking through and understanding what is really going on. Why do those guys on the Hill do nothing? Are they all lazy? No, they're not all lazy. They're doing exactly what they get paid to do.
Absolutely.
That's what people have to understand. Right. Exactly. And so who's paying them? Well, go take a look at the revolving door between the corporate world and politics. And you can start to get an understanding of what we've got going on there. You, the average, and I'm talking about you, the audience, the average Joe and Jane, you're not in the loop. So stop thinking you're in the loop because all
Right.
you're going to do is get frustrated. Start to understand what's really going on, and then that's how you can take the country back. You are not going to take the country back if you're going to sit there and think that the system is just a little busted, and all we need to do is put a couple of band-aids on it and just get the right person with the right haircut into that office, and everything will get better. It will not get better that way because it's not designed to get better. It's designed to do exactly what it's doing to the country.
That's right. You're absolutely right. And I have done shows on that. We, the American people, we the people have not elected a president since 1933. They're all chosen
Exactly.
by the owners of our country. And you know who said that? George Carlin.
Yeah.
You know, and he said it in such a funny way. If you haven't heard it, people, please go look it up. It's on YouTube. George Carlin and your government.
Well, he has a clip. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. It's a great clip.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know, we have so many human beings that have been prophets that have known and have gotten it out there. I think Bob Marley was one. You know, let's get together because they don't want us to get together.
Right.
You know, and that was a long time ago. And all we heard was, oh, well, this guy's a pothead. He doesn't really have anything to say. And this is not really my kind of music. So, but he was telling us the truth about what was really going on. And that's what George Carlin did. But no, I know I haven't voted. I voted once my whole life, once. And that was for Nixon. And I realized shortly after that everything was rigged, and I haven't voted since. Why? Because I am not going to play their game. I go in there, I pull that lever, and I feel good, and I get a sticker saying, I voted today, which means that I'm playing their game. It means nothing.
Yeah.
It means nothing.
Yeah.
You can vote till your hands bleed. It isn't going to change a thing.
No.
And now they don't even care. When Bush got in there, they don't even hide the crookedness. And you know, with the hanging chads and the guy that owns the machine saying that I would do anything to elect Bush.
Yeah.
You know, they're telling us in our face that it doesn't matter what we do. They've got it rigged. You know, and people say, well, how did this one get in? And how did that one get in for a second term? Because you have nothing to do with it. So if you think you're going to change it by voting, well, you are in pathetic shape because you do not have a clue about what's going on. You do not elect anything now.
You elect who they select.
That's right.
The thing. What also amazes me, Pamela, just on the theme that you're on, how is it that a bunch of really rich guys wind up on a stage somewhere and nobody ever asks how they got their money? Nobody ever digs into their background, ever. We don't know anything about Barack Obama.
I know, but you know, I have seen a copy of his student ID, which says foreign student on it.
Yeah.
That's enough right there.
I know. But you think
that is enough. And I have heard professors say he never showed up to one class, ever.
Right.
What is going on? Something's going on.
Well, he's been in the pipeline for a long time. That's the thing. See, Barack Obama just didn't go from being community organizer to senator to president. I mean, he's really not that smart. Okay.
No.
And so when somebody makes those types of leaps, you've got to put your thinking cap on and you got to say to yourself, how did that happen?
Yeah.
He's been in the pipeline for a long, long time. He's been created. And he was brought into the picture at a time when they said, okay, we're going to bring in a minority president now. Everybody's going to feel good. He's going to say all the right things. And then as soon as he got in office, what happened? Nothing changed. In fact, it got worse.
Yep.
Right.
Have you seen the little video that some black people have made about how much it's gotten worse?
Yep.
See, the information is out there. It's just that people have got to stop watching regular TV and go do some search. While we have the internet, you can get any information you want. You can see this, and you can see people. And I know Alex Jones has had a lady on that worked for Obama because she was just so amazed that she was going to get a free phone, you know.
Yes.
And she thought she was going to get her house payment and her car payment made by Obama. Well, Obama doesn't pay for things. The rest of us pay for things, you know. And I see this thing that pops up every time I go to look at the Powerball site, this pop-up comes up that says, Obama wants to give you a lowered house payment. Yeah, he does? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. That's insane.
Yeah.
But it's getting by because people are not processing information. They are so lulled, and I don't use asleep very much anymore. They're in a groggy state. They're awakening, but they're not fully awake. They're in a groggy state at this point. And as soon as they get awake, then all the fear hits. So then they have to walk through that fear and then figure out. So we have a massive situation on our hands, and we can't not deal with it, but we have to deal with it in a holistic manner. You know, we have to know that we've got problems at the top, but at the same time, we can't allow our country to disintegrate into something that we don't even recognize. And that is happening this minute.
Right.
This is happening right now. And it's not just happening here in my little area. It's happening everywhere. I keep up, I watch things, and I hear people speak, and this is happening everywhere. And you know, our society is the way it is because of our tolerance, but because we have respect for ourselves and for each other. And when you have a bunch of illegal invaders and other invaders, some of them are legal, that do not respect us or themselves, our society will change.
Well, and the other thing is, society is the way it is because it's so distracted and segmented, right? So there's one thing where, yes, Americans are very tolerant, but Americans are also extremely distracted and
Yes.
extremely segmented. You know, I talk to people all the time, Pamela, and, you know, I'll get into conversations with them about, you know, these types of issues, and they look at me and they'll say to me, Mike, all I can focus on is making my mortgage payment, keeping my job, getting the kids off to school.
I know.
So they look at you and they're like, I can't even begin to take this in because you know what? I don't have the bandwidth.
Right.
And so that's part of the problem. And that is also by design, folks.
Oh, absolutely.
To keep you on the hamster wheel. Absolutely. Keep you on the hamster wheel perpetually.
Right, right. I have counseled women who are just at the breaking point in tears, and they want to be a good mother. But that whole business, I don't know whether you remember, Mike, you probably do, but Helen Reddy singing that, you know, I'm a woman and I can go out and get the bacon and bring it home and put it in the frying pan. That's a BS if I've ever heard one. That's a lie. But people bought it. And the president just said the last few days that we don't want women to stay home. We want them out here in the workforce. Well, that's exactly the opposite of what we should do. Listen, people, my message is pay attention. The opposition to all life, everything they do is opposite our good. Opposite. We need families. Families have been the foundation of our country and our society, and the families have broken down. I have watched it happen, and I know how it happened, and I know how to fix it.
Yeah.
Get that woman back home. Get that mother making a home. Get that mother raising those children and instilling something in them. Number one, love, and number two, respect, and number three, responsibility. And we don't have that because your neighborhood child care doesn't care about your child. They care about the paycheck they get every week. And that's the way it is. So who's raising your child? No one. So do not listen to the opposition. Do the opposite of what they say. Women, stay home. And if you need some encouragement, call me. I'll give it to you. You'll be so fired up after talking to me, you'll go out and preach to other women. This is a cornerstone of our society. Ever since they have taken the woman out of the home, our country has gone to hell. And they have baited you with you deserve more. That man gets to go out in the world and you're
Equality.
stuck at home out in the, and that's all a lie. Give me anybody that's not on the payroll like Gloria Steinem is. They paid her to say that crap. They paid her and they told her that her magazine would be a success, and it has been, but our country has been destroyed by it.
Right.
We never had people hurting each other like we do now. We never had all of this crazy pharmacology for your babies, for your little children. I mean, everybody, did you know that your school system gets paid for every child they get put on Ritalin and those damn drugs? Did you know that? Your child is a commodity to these people. They don't care about you and they don't care about your child. And I don't care how nice they sound at the PTA meetings or whatever they're called now. You love your child. You birthed that child and you are responsible for that child. Whatever you've got to do, whatever you've got to sell, however you've got to downsize, stay home with your children, mothers, and homeschool. Those education systems are not where your child should be. Stay home. Take care of your children and homeschool. It's easier than it's ever been. And we need to take advantage of these things while we still have them, rather than going out and falling into the disruption and the chaos that our opposition leaders are pushing us to. Let's do what we can do. We can do this. We can downsize. I've helped probably 100 families downsize, sell that extra car, live with one car, and stay home with your children. And I'm going to tell you something, it's been a success. And every time I see a mother in the middle of the day with their babies, I say thank you. Thank you for what you're doing to society. And you'd have to know me to know that I do that. But if my husband were here, I would have him verify that. I say things like that to people, and it's powerful. It's powerful to say what you're doing is appreciated and it's right. I know it's hard, but please do it. Sorry for the soapbox, Mike, but I have to take every opportunity to say that. Our education system has nothing to do with educating. It has to do with entrainment and programming. And I'll tell you, it isn't easy programming. Your children are having a horrific time at school. They are not having a fun time like those of us that went to school 50 and 60 and 40 years ago. It is a very stressful time for these people. And they are people. They are little children.
Well, it's well said, Pamela, and I agree with everything you said. What's gone on here is the total breakdown of the family. That's
Yes.
what's happening. So when you have the breakdown of the family structure, then you have this disorganization, you have this dysfunction that just permeates society. And we talk about equality because the big thing they were talking about, you mentioned, the woman
Gloria
Steinem and women going to work versus staying home. Well, you know what the equality is? The equality is this. It's the role of the father. It's the role of the mother.
Right.
It's the role of the husband, the role of the wife. That's the equality, you see?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
it. Because what's happened is they have made most of the population lose their focus on what's really important. It is the family. Because without the family component, without a tight-knit family, without the parental influence, you're going to have a severe breakdown in society. And you want proof? Take a look around you today. Take a look at what's going on. Now, in all fairness to many of the families, they knew that it was going to be very difficult to tear the families apart. So what they did was they made it very difficult for families to have a one-family income. They put that in play too.
Almost impossible.
Yeah. So that's the thing, right? So what happened was, many women were staying home. And back when I was a kid back in the 60s and even into the 70s. So today, though, how could you afford a house? I mean, how could you afford a house that even resembles something that that your parents had for you without, you couldn't, right? Without both parents going off and going to work. And so, it started very incrementally. The man would work, woman would
Yes.
stay home. Then the man would work and the woman would work part-time. Then they both started working.
Right.
Then there was, oh, by the way, now we need daycare before school and after school. Really, what's happened now is many children are wards of the state.
Oh, and that's what the state wants. They want to be the father. They want to be the parent.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And you talked about putting the kids on Ritalin. All your kids, they're guinea pigs. They've convinced you that if a kid's a little rambunctious or, they're a little energetic, whatever it may be, that is abnormal. That's what you've been convinced to believe about your child.
Right.
Kids are rambunctious. They do run around wild. That's part of being a kid.
That's right.
So,
they're full of energy because they're still growing.
Exactly. And so now what's happened is people have fallen into that trap. It's like, oh, you know what? Give my kid some drugs. Calm him down, sedate him, so he just sits in the room and he drools out of the side of his mouth and watches TV. Now I'm happy because I don't have to deal with Johnny running around and being rambunctious. It's just so wrong on so many levels, but this is what people have embraced now. And the reason why we do these shows, folks, is so that maybe we'll get some folks to open their eyes and open their ears and take a look around and say, you know what? They're right.
Yeah.
And we do have to start changing this dynamic because this thing is going to crash and burn, Pamela. It's going to crash and burn.
It is. And the thing is, we're going to be forced into this anyway.
Yep.
Because of what's coming. And I understand, believe me, I understand that people are losing their homes. I understand that. But you've already lost your children. You've already lost them to the government. So what do you do when you lose your home? You have to figure out how to rent. That's what you have to do.
Right.
And you never really own your home anyway.
Exactly.
You never own it because I'm going to tell you, look it up on the internet. People that even the government made a mistake that they that they owed taxes and they did not. They still took that woman's home and sold it, which is beyond me. Do you know what story I'm talking about, Mike?
I absolutely do. Yep.
So the insanity is so everywhere. And when I say insane, I mean it advisedly. There is no logic in that. Yeah. It is not sane to take a woman's home. Well, she's suing, and I hope she gets multiple millions of dollars.
And by the way, it was $2,000.
But she didn't even owe it.
I know, but my point being is, if they had a problem over $2,000, they took her home.
I know.
Over an issue that was quantified as $2,000. That's how insane the whole thing is.
That's right. And we can't allow this to just go by. Yep. This can't just slide by as something that's normal and okay. It isn't normal and it isn't okay. It isn't even logical or sane. It is incorrect. And we have judges that have too much power. I said it. They have too much power. They're people like you and me. And the addiction of power is so everywhere right now, everywhere, that people they have to have more. It literally is an addiction. And you think about it from that standpoint, and you look at people in positions. What have we got? We've got people that are addicted to power in the police department. We've got judges that are addicted to power. Boy, they can do anything they want. Even when a jury says, we recommend this, they can do anything they want. So we need to be aware of this. We've got real problems here, and we can't just focus on one. But one thing we can do, while they're trying to foment us into a fighting gun war, we can reorganize our lives and say, oh, we made some mistakes here. No guilt, no blame. They're heavy, they do nothing. No guilt, no blame. Just fix it.
Yep.
Just fix it. And I'm going to tell you something. You can go to puremomentum.net and hit that contact button and write me. And if you need somebody to help you figure out how to do this, I will help you. I have done it. And it can work. But you can't have the same thing with two incomes that you have with one, but you can have your children. And I'm going to tell you something. It is not working now. You're doing the best you can, but you are not in good shape, and your family is really not a family because you've lost your children. Your children are drugged. They cannot get access to their emotions. And Mike, do you remember the doctor that named ADD and ADHD and all that, admitting that he made it up? It is BS.
Right.
And millions of children are on this. I had a guy come to me for counseling. He wanted off of it. He was 21 years old and he'd been on it since he was 7. And he's tried to get off of it, and really horrific things have happened to his life. You can't do this to people. You can't addict people and then think everything's going to be okay. It's not.
Well, I get questions from folks because when I tell them about ADHD being essentially created out of thin air, it was just something that they decided that, they were going to say that was a disorder, and then they were going to put drugs out there to treat it, right? There was no science behind it.
Right.
But the thing is, people will come back to me and say, but Mike, but I did have attention disorder. I couldn't, had racing thoughts, and I couldn't focus and everything else. So there's got to be something there. I said, yeah, you know what the something else is? The something else is you're eating junk. You're consuming junk. I mean, so chemicals, right. So you're getting your flu shots, you're getting your vaccines, you're drinking your aspartame, you're drinking your fluoride, and you're eating your GMO foods. What do you expect? What do you expect to happen to your mind and body if you continue to ingest that stuff? What do you expect? So, and still you can't get through to people on that because they, that's another brick wall where people just don't believe that they're being poisoned, through what they're ingesting into their body. Oh, they wouldn't intentionally put stuff in there that would hurt me.
Right.
I'm like, oh my Lord,
Yeah, right.
But the thing is, the evidence is out there. The facts are out there. So
that's true.
Anyway.
That's true. Well, all right. We're at the end of the hour, so I'm going to close this out, Mike, and then we're going to go to the members section. We so appreciate everyone being with us. We hope we have stimulated you to process some of your very own thinking, not someone else's thinking, but your thinking, and do some research and change some things. Change isn't always negative, although for the last 6 years it has been, but change can be good. And when you see what has happened, you can make some changes. I really encourage you to come back to the wholeness of who and what you are as a human being. That's where you're going to find your answers, and that's where you're going to find your stability. Please come to the members section. We're going to talk a bit about immigration and Ferguson and chemtrails and GMO, even a little bit more. So we invite you to come to the members section. You have been listening to Pamela Tartar on Factor 9 on Pure Momentum Network, and my very special guest is Michael Williams. Oh, Mike, before we go, I want to say your information again, and it is sageofquay.blogspot.com.
Yes, or you can just go to sageofquay.com.
And then laboroflovemusic.com. And what is your YouTube channel called?
It's Sage of Quay Radio Hour.
Very good. We got all that in. Is there anything else that you would like to say?
That is everything else.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks. This is Pamela Tartar saying thank you for being here. Be as human as you can be. You'll never go wrong doing that. See you in the next section. This is Pamela Tartar, Factor 9 on Pure Momentum Network, and we're in the members section, your special section. Thank you so much for supporting us and allowing us to have this platform and keep it going. Thank you for your presence, and thank you for your support. My very special guest tonight is a colleague and a friend, Mike Williams, and his websites are sageofquay.blogspot.com or sageofquay.com, laboroflovemusic.com, and YouTube channel is, Mike?
The Sage of Quay Radio Hour.
Thank you. I didn't write that down, and I should have. Sage of Quay. Well, welcome to the members section, Mike. Thank you so much for being with us.
You're very welcome, Pamela.
Well, I so enjoy visiting with you personally and on the air. And what I like most, I think, about us doing a show is that we just let it go, and hopefully it will stimulate people to at least examine what we're saying and process it. That would be a payback for me if people would just process what we're saying. And you can pitch it out after you process it, but at least take a really good look at it.
Yeah, I mean, it might get a little animated, but that's because these issues are out there and they need to be dealt with. And so I enjoy the fact that we're able to air it out.
Yes, I do as well. Now, I would like to talk about immigration at this point. You and I both have friends in Europe, and I talk to people in England, several people in England, and Sweden, Australia, and I'm probably leaving someone else. Oh, Ireland. And everyone is concerned with immigration because it has gotten out of hand. And in order to correct it, we need to stop all ALL immigration for 25 years to bring it back to some kind of sanity.
Right.
Now, what we've got going on now at our open borders is an illegal invasion, and we are being infected. Our society is being infected, and we are being affected by people who have a totally different society than we have. The expectations of our society is completely different. And so we're not prepared. So we don't understand what we're in for a few years. Now we're starting to reap some of the benefits, quote unquote, of this illegal invasion, but it's nothing like it's going to be 10 years from now. It's going to accelerate in a bad way. And we've got to do something about it, and we've got to do it now. What do you have to say about immigration, Mike?
Well, the first thing I would like to say is, because when we get into this discussion, you're going to hear people respond with, well, this is a racist discussion, and how come you're not tolerant, and so on. And, I've had this discussion before, and what I explain to people is, look, the race card, I should say, or calling me a racist, or anybody who brings this up, is really a cop-out. Because what I explain to folks, Pamela, is this. My response back to folks that would want to have that debate with me is, you have a home. And I'll say, you have a home, yes? They say, yes. How many kids do you have? 2 and a wife? Okay, so you have 4 people in your house. And you run that home on an income, yes? Yes. And you have expenses? Yes, I do. Okay. So now what happens if 10 people show up in your home and they don't bring in any income, but they expect to be fed, they expect to be housed, a roof over their head, they expect to watch your TV, use your phone, whatever it may be. Now, is that an affordable model? Is that something that you are willing to do? Absolutely not. That's what they'll say.
Yeah.
Okay? The point I'm trying to make is it's not an issue of race, at least from my perspective. It is not affordable. It's a catastrophe of an economic model. That's the problem. So just imagine that the United States is your home, and it has certain income and expenses, and there is an apparatus in place in which the country operates under. A business model, if you will. Use that as an example, or if you're going to use the home example, it's the budget you have at home. Yeah, the budget you have at home. And as soon as you allow an influx of it, I don't care who the people are. I don't care if they're Mexicans or Martians. It doesn't matter. It has nothing to do where the people are coming from. It has to do with the influx of people that are coming into this country, and we really cannot assess the contribution.
Right.
That's the problem. So if they come into the country, they're going to have to be fed. They're going to have to be housed. And the government's going to have to go do that, right? So the government is spending money. Whose money are they spending? They're spending your money.
Right.
We need to just shut this whole thing down, because it is creating an economic crisis. If nothing else, it's creating more than that. Okay. There is cultural issues and everything else. But if we just look at it at a very base level, it's economic. And I find that when I have that discussion, more people can get their heads wrapped around it, because they kind of leapfrog that, and they want to get into the whole thing. Well, I want to be tolerant, and I don't want to be called a racist. I don't want to be called a name. So you know what? And it really doesn't affect me because, well, they're not living in my house. But the truth of the matter is they are living in your house because your country is your home.
Yep. And they're living on your dollar because the government doesn't have a dollar. It only has your dollar.
Exactly. So I know it was a little long-winded, but that's how I kind of address the situation.
That's good. That's very good. Well, because of Obamacare, people are working part-time jobs now because of insurance. And so we're already in an economic crisis. Our debt for the country is horrendous. It's actually, we can't even imagine it. If you start talking in trillions of dollars, we cannot imagine that.
No.
We can imagine million now, but we can't imagine trillions.
It's like gazillions. I mean, even the number that they give us is bogus. I mean, God only knows how much money that they are printing. Nobody really knows. Yeah.
And so people have lost their homes, are continuing to be foreclosed on. We've got a lot of issues going on here in our country. And then for them to throw this illegal invasion on us, it is a guarantee. Well, it's death.
What it's designed to do is, again, in the first hour, we talked about subversion. And that's what it is. It is intentional subversion. We have laws. We have, if you want to come into this country and you want to enter into this country, there's a process. There's a legal process to do this.
Yes.
And so when our leaders or our misleaders abdicate their responsibility and turn their backs, and again, you have to look behind the curtain and start asking questions. Why do they allow this to happen?
Right.
And the reason why, exactly, you have to ask that question. The reason why they're allowing this to happen is because this is the objective on both sides of the aisle. I don't care if it's left or right, Democrat, Republican, whatever. That's all theater.
It is theater. And you know how an actor on a stage can be the bad guy today, and then next week he's the good guy?
Yes.
That's what we've got now. They just exchange costumes. That's all.
They're
all. It doesn't matter whether they're red or blue. They all are actors on a stage. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. That's exactly. I mean, the stuff that we're seeing today, Pamela, what I tell folks, they look around, they say, oh my God, it's out of control. And they'll say, that Obama. And I said, really? I said, you think it's just Barack Obama? I said, you think this entire apparatus just came about because of 6 years of Barack Obama?
No.
No.
The foundation was laid for him to be able to do this.
Exactly. And I will argue that it goes all the way back to the creation of the Federal Reserve.
Oh, yeah.
Easily, right? And I can take it even back before that. We can go back to the Act of 1871. But the point being is that everything you're seeing today has been a slow, incremental march towards despotism and tyranny.
Absolutely.
That's it.
That is absolutely the truth.
Yep.
And that's why we have got to be aware of all of these things.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to see this is real. We have got 25 million jobs that are held by illegal invaders right now. And we have laws on the books right this minute that could be enforced. The first offense is a fine. The second offense is a jail term. There is nobody that's doing this, and they aren't even afraid of it. We have Tyson companies here in our area, and they hire a lot of illegals, but they pay off the guy to tell them when they're coming. And that day, the illegals stay home. And I had a girl, I read a post from a girl the other day that said that there are people in this certain town in America that have been on a waiting list to get a job with Tyson in their area. And, they were moving up the list and they were moving up the list. And all of a sudden, massive amounts of these illegal aliens were brought to town, and Tyson had to hire them. Now, why did they have to hire them? I don't know, but they got the word from somewhere to hire them. And so the regular people, the people that are paying for the welfare that their wives are probably getting, can't go to work. Now we've got an issue here. We've got a problem. And if somebody wants to call me a racist, go right ahead. It's not going to worry me a bit, because I am experiencing racism as a white female. I'm experiencing that. I never had affirmative action. I never had anybody move anything for me. I never had an education paid for. I never owned a slave. My parents didn't own slaves. My grandparents, my great-grandparents go all the way back. Never owned a slave. And on my father's side, we were Cherokee and hid in the mountains rather than go on the trail.
Yeah.
To be murdered. So don't give me any of this crap about how guilty I am about slavery. I am not. And I refuse the guilt and I refuse the blame. And I'm sick and tired of hearing it. And if you want to call me a racist, go right ahead. It's your privilege. But I am being injured by all of this. And my ex-husband lost a job because a woman was Black and Hispanic and a woman. And this was in 1971. And they said, we can fill 3 slots with this one woman. And the next one that comes up will be yours. Now that's horrific. That is not right. The most qualified person should get the job. Period. And I am absolutely sure that it is part of the programming, it is part of the order from the opposition to all life to destroy the white race. And I see it more every day, and I'm going to fight against it, and I'm going to speak against it, because there is a reason that we're different. And there's nothing wrong with being different. Our uniqueness is where our value is. That's how we were created, to be individuals. We're not all meant to be the same thing. And that's what the opposition to all life is doing, trying to make us be all the same. And we are not. And I refuse it. I will not be that. I am who and what I am, and I'm going to be the best of who and what I am.
Well, well said, Pamela. And one comment I do want to make is that going back to you're saying you reject the label of racist, and to talk about this, and and it's really unbelievable that we even have to qualify our statements by saying that I'm not a racist and explaining it. It's just, that is how programmed that society is, that if you talk about certain things, all of a sudden people cower and it's off limits. You really shouldn't be talking about that, But the point of the matter is, as I mentioned before, what's going on with immigration is it's unaffordable, it's not sustainable, and when the system crashes, and it will crash, it's going to crash down on the heads of everyone, legal or illegal. And that's what people have to get their heads around. They have to get their heads wrapped around the fact that, again, I keep saying this is an intentional subversion. It's by design.
Oh, yes.
It's
every
by
step
design.
of it.
Right, because the United States has too much freedom. It has too much wealth, or had too much wealth, and it's got too many guns. And in order for the elites to put in play their new world order, they have got to squash the United States. They've got to put the boot down on it. And so what you're seeing is they are actually using the illegals.
Yes.
If even the person who's listening to this that might be from Mexico or wherever, think about the fact that even though you're saying, well, I'm getting better wages in the United States, but think about the fact of what they're doing with you. They're using you to implement an agenda. Is that what you want? Do you want to be used? Are you a tool? Is that all you are?
That's what the Black people have been used, and it's time for them to stand up, and some of them are, and say, no more. I see what's happened. I mean, they worship Margaret Sanger. They have statues of her.
Yeah.
In their neighborhood, and she hated Black people and Hispanics.
Yeah.
She called them weeds, and she had a program, and I did a show on this on the People's Voice. And the whole thing was use who they trust, their ministers. They paid their ministers, and they got their ministers to get girls to want to want this, and that fit right in a nice even puzzle piece to the government wanting to be the parent, wanting to be the daddy, wanting to be the husband. Oh, yes, we're going to pay for you and your babies, but no men. You can't have a man around. You see how they have this organized? There is no accident. This is extremely well planned and orderly.
Absolutely. And you know what? My question's always been, why hasn't Mexico been developed? If the United States is so concerned about the lifestyle and the lives of Mexicans, why didn't the United States work with the Mexican government to help develop Mexico?
Well, we could take the money that we're spending here, and number one, we've got to send them all back home. And number two, we have got to spend the money there. I would rather spend the money in their country.
Well, my point being is that their homeland was intentionally kept oppressed.
But see, the thing is, Mike, people don't understand. Mexico is very rich in resources.
I know.
And they have extremely wealthy people there.
Right, but look
it up, the number of multimillionaires in Mexico.
Right, but look at the I'm talking about the mass population.
Oh, it's horrible there.
It's horrible, right? And what the point I'm making is that the elites have decided that they're just not going to do anything with Mexico. They're just not going to do anything for the people of Mexico. The people who are the elites, yeah, they're going to thrive just like in any other country. Here, they thrive. Right. They have their sovereignty. They're free. They can come and go as they please. But the whole thing is just one gigantic mess. And that's why, again, we have to get people to awaken to what's really going on. And I don't care if you're white, black, pink, green, red. You really have to wake up to what the agenda is and what's going to be in store for everybody. I would say, 10 years from now, if
it won't be that long.
If we don't get off the dime, I'm sure you're right.
It can't be that long because we were already in economic problems. How can people continue to pay what they paid before on less hours at work? They can't. And if you think that companies are going to pay the same thing for somebody working 30 hours as someone working 40 hours, well, you're in dreamland.
Yeah.
People are going to be hurting very, very soon. They already are hurting, but it's going to be very evident pretty soon. And it is getting ready to collapse. I mean, there is no other way. It cannot be other than that. It is impossible.
I had a conversation with somebody today, another conversation, and I said to them that in 10 years, this country, the United States, will be in abject poverty. And they looked at me. Yep. And they said, that's ridiculous. I said, it's ridiculous? Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I said, well, let me ask you a question. As people get older, there's no pension plans. The 401ks have been completely decimated. And wait, stock market's going to crash again. Wait.
Oh, yes.
And many people have not recovered from the 2008 crash.
That's right. And they won't.
And you're not going to be able to live on Social Security if Social Security is even around. So
they've stolen Social Security, Mike.
Right. My point being, Pamela, is when people start reaching 60, 65, 70, 75 years old, let me ask you a question. What are you going to do? How many people who are listening to this right now know what they're going to do? How are you going to retire? What's your plan?
Right.
And people want to avoid that. Oh, yeah. I still have time to figure it out. Okay, if you say so. But this country has absolutely decimated people's ability to retire.
That's right. Well, they have worked the health, quote unquote, it's not health system to the point that with everything they've given us and the poisons in our food, they don't expect us to live longer than our working years. So they're extending the working years so that as soon as we literally die before we're finished working.
That's exactly right. And let's just say you're 70 years old, well, how are you going to live? How are you going to live if you have no pension? How are you going to live if you have no 401k? You have to pay rent. You have medical costs. You have to eat. You have to pay for heat.
That's right. And you can't live without electricity anymore.
Exactly.
And right now, in our town, they're having a meeting tonight about raising the sewer. Now, they just raised the electricity. They just raised the trash 2 months ago. Now the sewer's getting raised now, and it's only going 8% this year, but it's also going to be 8% next year. Now everybody's getting less hours and less money and less benefits, but everything else is going up. And you know what? When I was a teenager, my dad taught me things about what was going to happen. And he said, number one, when you see the dollar change, when it has a different appearance, that's a sign. And I'm going to tell you, when I saw that first $100 bill, I can't even remember when it was, but you remember when it changed?
Yeah.
I got chills. I was in the middle of a store. I think it was in Tulsa. It was somewhere away from home. And oh my God, I got the chills. I said, oh, Daddy, I remember what you said. All right. The next thing was, there is a plan to make people work longer. And he said, you wait. You're going to see them steal the money from Social Security. And they did. Mm-hmm. And they told us they were doing it. It wasn't even hidden.
Yeah.
They took the money out of Social Security. Now, had they taken all the money that we've paid all these years out of every paycheck and invested that the way they invest their own personal money, we'd have plenty of money.
Well, the thing is, the whole money issue, Pamela, from my perspective, is all smoke and mirrors. You know?
Well, it is.
Because they can print as much money as they want. I mean, they can do whatever they want. I mean, I always laugh because on one hand, they're telling us, as an example, we can't fund education. We can't get enough textbooks. We can't get paper. We can't get enough pens and pencils. And this is true. I'm not making this up. I'm in school districts here where I live. They can't get textbooks. They can't get enough notepads, whatever. But they have trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars to throw into the war machine.
Oh, absolutely.
Somehow they're able to fund that, but they can't fund the classrooms.
Well, you know what really ticks me off? You know how much money is in the lotteries?
Yes.
And a part of that goes to education. That's how all the states passed it.
Right.
But what I just found out recently, like in the last couple of years, is that they actually take that money to pay the budget. It isn't extra money. They actually take, like if they were going to have $2 million for education, they take $2 million out of the lottery system, and then they use that $2 million that was allocated for education and use it for something else.
Yeah. So they have to rely on people to gamble, in other words. Right?
Well, but it should have, that's not what people thought.
Right.
We thought that this was extra. And I am so against, and this is again part of my soapbox, I am so against little children having to learn to be sales people and beg people for stuff when most of our real estate taxes go for education.
Right.
And we have people come around selling candy bars for education. We have people selling pizzas for education. We have people selling popcorn for education. These kids, when do they study? They're always selling something.
Yeah.
And I've talked to teachers, and teachers are buying out of their own budgets.
That's right.
Stuff for their class. That's insane.
It is insane. And it goes back to what I said before. But they have trillions of dollars to spend on the war machine.
Well, I'll tell you what I say, and I've said it for 20 years. When they call a war, nobody should go. Just don't go. Muhammad Ali went to jail. They can't put 2 million guys in jail. But even if they could put 2 million guys in jail,
there'll be no war.
We wouldn't have a war.
Right.
You know? And they wouldn't stay there long because the rest of the people would raise hell.
Yeah.
But people have got to wake up. And that is why our soldiers are committing suicide. They can't do it anymore. They go over there. They're told they're fighting for our freedom. It has nothing to do with our freedom. Every war is a money war. Every war. Every war. And so they come home and they see that we're losing our freedoms every day. And everything they were promised when they signed up, they can't get now, or they have to fight for. And
look at the VA hospital.
Oh my God, it's horrendous, just horrendous. And there is an attack everywhere, but there is an extreme, visible attack on our vets, our warriors.
The troops and the vets are being used. They're pawns, you know. And you talk about the suicide rate. You're absolutely right. And a big piece of that is all of the psychotropic drugs they have them on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's been going on since before Vietnam. And you can read about this now. You don't have to be ignorant about this. And when I say ignorant, I mean ignoring the facts. ignorant. Don't take that as an insult. Take that as something to look into. What does that mean? It means that you're ignoring some really important information. The history that we have been given of our world and our planet is a lie. It's not true. The stuff that is written down is not true. You need to talk to people that were there. And there are people that were there and that have studied and have spoken, and they're out there. They're on the internet. You can find them. And you don't have to believe this stuff. But I still say, when they call a war, don't go. And I'm telling you, I'm a girl and I'm too old to go now. But if things were going right in our country and someone tried to attack us, I would fight. There are women fighting all over the world. Who do you think made the difference in Iceland? It was the women. The women stood out with their spoons and their pots and pans, and they protested and protested. And you know what happened? They threw the buggers out. They threw the bad guys out and they reworked things, and they're still working on it. It's not perfect. Nothing is, but we're in such a hell of a mess. It's going to take a while. But they put the bankers in jail. They forgave all the debt because it's all a big lie anyway. It's fraud. Our whole monetary system is fraud. So why should we have this debt thing saddling us and smothering us to death? It should be forgiven. Iceland did that.
Right. And there's a big difference between, and you touched on this, a big difference between national defense and imperialism.
Yes.
And so what we have, our wars are imperialist wars. It's an empire. I mean, it's an empire. It goes back, and if you just go back and take a look at the Roman Empire, do your history, and you could take a look at what the United States is doing today, there is very little difference other than the fact that the weapons and the technology obviously is far more advanced. But it's the same premise.
And the tyranny of the Roman Empire was very open in your face, and ours is getting there, but it's been much more hidden until now.
Right.
You know, it is becoming much more blatant and in your face today. And again, some of us are past the awake and grogginess state, and we can see it, but the people that are not awake don't have a chance of seeing it. The people that are groggy are coming into it. So we have a shot. We have an opportunity to do something. It's not too late, but it's almost too late. We are absolutely at the tipping point, and we're just about at that critical mass. And every person needs to stand up and see what side they're on. If you're willing to stand behind your government, even though you know it's a corporation and it has nothing to do with taking care of the people or the country, then you've got a mental illness, and you're not going to be able to help us. You're going to be in the way. But if you understand that our government is a corporation, and this is all I'm going to say on this subject, go to Dun & Bradstreet and look up the United States of America. Dun & Bradstreet lists businesses, not governments. And your local schools are listed on Dun & Bradstreet, and your police department.
That's right.
Your city council, and they know it, but the people aren't supposed to know it.
Right.
That's an insult.
And if you're a corporation, you have shareholders, you have board of directors, and when you put into that perspective, then you can start to really piece together, well, who are they really working for? Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's not for the people. It's not.
That's right. And so that is your answer as to why the congressman and the constitutional government doesn't work. It doesn't work because it isn't being applied. It would work, but it isn't being applied because it isn't our government. It has been taken over, and it is a corporation. And so that's where the problem is. So you can vote till your hands bleed, and it won't change a dadgum thing.
Well, that's one of the reasons why Obama doesn't have to really put forth a birth certificate, because he's the president of a corporation, United States Incorporated. Right. I mean, we wouldn't ask the CEO of Ford, could you please show us your birth certificate? So this is the little game that's going on. Again, it's theater, and they're masquerading. They're masquerading as an organic government for the people. They do it because they know that if the masses figured out what's really going on, there would be hell to catch, maybe. I think so many
Yeah.
people are asleep. I even question that, but that's really what's going on.
No, there would be hell to pay, because years ago, Papa Bush said, if the American people ever find out what we've done, we would not be safe on any street.
I remember that quote. Yep.
So they know to fear us, because, and I don't go to movies and I don't watch TV, but I've heard about the movie The Ants, where somebody is talking and saying, there's so many more of them than there are of us. If they ever find out that their numbers are power,
Right.
we have the numbers and they give them to us. The 1% is the greedy psychopaths at the top.
Yep.
So they're, 99% of us, and we can't do something about the 1%. It's because we're not whole. We're not in our natural order as a human being. And if we were, they wouldn't have a chance. They would not have a chance. I've seen this, folks. I know this more than I know I'm talking to Mike and you right now. I know that this is correct. If we just come into who and what we are as a human being, forget the religions, forget all the other divisiveness and the divisions. Forget that. It doesn't matter what religion you belong to. It doesn't matter what political status you are. It doesn't matter what race you are. You're a human being. Be a human being. If you do that, we can lick these opposition to all life. We can do it. We can knock them out of the ballpark. Why? Because we have the right on our side, number one. We really do. And, in wars, people pray to, both sides pray to their gods, because each one thinks that their God is the one that's the good one and the right one and whatnot. But what I know is absolutely true is we're all human beings. And if we be what we are as a human being, we can get this thing put back on shape. But we've got to be in our natural order, our natural place in the natural order as a human being. Now, Mike, let's move on. I want to talk about Ferguson a little bit, not much.
Okay.
It's perfectly obvious that they, with quotes around it, continue fomenting what's going on in Ferguson. It dies down a little bit, and then somebody gets it going again.
Right.
And usually it's the race baiters and those people who have used their fellow Black people to make their careers and make them rich. They come in and they start stirring things up. It's always been that way.
Exactly. It's all manipulation.
It is all manipulation. And when and if intelligent Black people see this, then they can stop complying with it. And that will make a lot of change. A lot of change. But then you won't have the victim card and the slavery card and the affirmative action and all this other stuff. So when you see the truth, then you have to be responsible.
I think a lot of the Black community is seeing what their leadership really is. The Jesse Jacksons of the world, the Al Sharpton. I have no idea how he became a leader. But in any case, they're seeing it. And to be honest, I think there was a lot that was shown by the residents of Ferguson that
Right.
I think took the power structure by surprise. Be perfectly honest with you. It did. It did.
And it stopped it.
Yep.
It quelled what was going on, but then it got fired back up again.
Yeah, because the elites, they're sandbox. They like to go into the urban areas.
Right.
Yeah. And they like to stir up trouble there, and because they think they're easily manipulated. But what's happening is, even though you and I are saying people have to wake up, there has been an awakening.
Oh, yes.
And even in the urban areas, there's been a huge awakening. And,
Right.
People are seeing this now. And Ferguson was interesting because, they came in with all their toys, their tanks and their Humvees and their RoboCop outfits and, their guns with their laser scopes and all that. And, it just absolutely backfired on them. Backfired.
Yep. That's right. And Mike, a lot of small towns have been trying to get rid of that since Ferguson started. They're trying to get rid of all those tanks and stuff, the heavy equipment, and the government won't take it back.
Well, then what they should do is
blow them up.
The governors of each state should set aside some state property somewhere and just tell the police departments, put it over there. Just park it over there and just take it off the streets. Because when they drive around that stuff, that's confrontational. Because the average person in a small town is sitting there going, well, first of all, we don't have any crime here other than maybe some petty burglary or whatever it may be. Why do we have that equipment? Why do we need that? There is no explanation for it other than the fact that boys with toys.
That's what it is, but it's not toys. People die from this crap.
Exactly.
And you spoke about it earlier. They, even with all of our technology now, with mapping and directions, they go in the wrong house several times a day.
Yeah.
And it's not just knocking the door down. They shoot people. Well,
they threw a flash grenade, this is going back a couple of months ago, into a house, and it went into a playpen where like a 2 or 3-year-old was. And that baby was severely burned.
I've seen his face. He's damaged for life.
It's unbelievable. And there's no apology. There's no anything. You know, they look at it, well, you know what? That's kind of collateral damage in the work that
I know, but that term right there in and of itself was used for war.
Exactly.
It's not supposed to be on our property. And what happened, well, we know what happened, but there's not supposed to be that kind of boots on the ground here on our soil.
No.
And if they can have them in our town, which they do have it in my very town, and the other day they were looking for a guy, and they showed up with the SWAT team with this huge 2-story tank.
Yeah.
And I think it was 25 guys to go to a house that they didn't even know if this guy was there or not.
Yeah.
Not very far from me, less than 3 miles from where I sit this minute. And I'm not well enough to go banging on doors and doing what I did when I was young, but this is horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. Why? To get us used to seeing these tyrannical, warlike things happening in our little towns.
It's conditioning.
It is conditioning.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. And when the government gave this, quote, surplus, unquote, equipment, it came with a price tag, and that price tag was Agenda 21. That price tag was the feds tell you what to do.
Yeah.
When we say you do this and this and this, you have to do it. Well, they think, well, we're all fighting for the country, so what's wrong with that?
Right.
But on another show that I did about the incremental militarization of the police, I read a report from a retired police commissioner. And he said, if you think that these boys are not going to play with these toys, then you really are asleep. And I went through the whole thing from starting with pepper spray to tasers to killing animals to beating people to now it's a regular daily, several times a day, people get killed by the police department who are supposed to be protecting them.
Well, many of the police departments are being trained by the Israelis.
I know that.
And so if you want to take a look at what our police departments will be doing in short order, all you need to do is take a look at how the Israeli police and the Israeli military deal with the Palestinians. And, you know, and if you watch a video of what goes on in Israel, and then you take a look at and watch a video of what goes on here with police tactics, you're going to see
similarities.
There's no question about it. They're right? Yeah.
It's coming. It's coming. In the last 3 days, I have seen where Israelis are picking up little kids, 8 and 10 and 12-year-old little boys coming home from school, and there'll be 8 police, Israeli police or military, whatever they call them, descend on a little child and grab them.
Yeah.
It is absolutely demonic to do that. A human being that is a real human being protects children and elders. And when you see a civilization that does not protect the little ones and the elders, you see a corrupt, degenerated, almost to the end of that society.
Absolutely.
And what do we do now? We warehouse our babies and we will warehouse our elders. We're there.
And just bow to authority because everybody's an authority except you.
That's right.
That's the mentality.
And that is the opposition.
Yep.
That is the opposition to all life. Go opposite. They are not the authority. We just talked about in the first hour, the Ebola czar doesn't have a clue about anything medical. How can he be an authority? It's the opposite. He is not an authority, period. And there are people out there who are authorities who would have offered, but that's the proof that they don't want to do anything.
Exactly. That's right.
But Ferguson, I just want to throw this out. I won't go into it very much, but Ferguson is a suburb of St. Louis. St. Louis has the archway. That archway is a gateway to dimensions. In order to open a gateway, you need energy, and you need a specific kind of energy for a specific opening. It's kind of like when you get in an elevator, you can go up or you can go down. It's still the same elevator, but I can go to the 14th floor or I can go down to the basement. And this fomenting that's going on in Ferguson has to do with feeding the energy and not in a good place to that archway to open a gateway. And that's not the only thing that's going on up in that area. The end of the baseball season, what do you call that game?
The World Series?
Yeah, wasn't that held in St. Louis?
I don't watch the World Series anymore.
I don't either, but I've heard people talk about it. There's a whole lot going on. I know that Missouri was involved in it. And I'm almost positive that one of the games was played there. And you get that many people together. Why do you think they have rituals at football games to Baphomet and to other entities? Because all of those people there giving it attention add to that energy. So I'm just throwing this out. You don't even have to respond, Mike. And people, all I'm saying is there is so much more that is unseen than is seen. There's reasons, layers and layers and details of reasons why things are happening. And they are not accidents. They are pieces of puzzles. They fit together very nicely to form a picture. And one of those puzzle pieces has to do with the gateway under that arch in St. Louis.
Well, the only thing I'll add, Pamela, is for those in the audience that are listening and are not familiar with how deep the rabbit hole goes and some of the stuff you're talking about, I'm going to recommend a book. Read John Lash's Not in His Image.
That's a good one.
And if you read that book, you'll understand about the unseen forces, and you'll be able to get a perspective around what Pamela is explaining, because it is true, and these unseen forces are controlling things.
Okay, I'm going to go back on my word. I'm going to say something else.
Okay.
The gateways have been sealed on purpose for our protection. Certain entities from other dimensions are not supposed to be here. And we have been protected from this. They have not been able to get here. But when gateways are opened and the button is pushed to get that dimension, then those people can enter here where they never were supposed to be here. We are not aware of them. Most people are not. There's not even a 1/10 of 1% of the people on this planet that know about this. And when they come here, you talk about us being prey. We have no comprehension. And they have been locked away and not able to come here. But there are beings that are working for that side of things, the opposition to all life, I call them. And they are working together to open gateways all over this planet. And rituals are done. And people participate in rituals and don't even know it. But by their presence and by their very attention to something that's going on, even though they don't have a clue what it is, they are adding their energy. And when they do it at football games and at baseball stadiums, that is a massive, massive funnel of energy. going into opening a gateway and other things. But right now, the big goal for the opposition to all life, including our planet, is to open the doors for these beings on other dimensions that were never supposed to be here, and we were protected from them. Okay, that's all I'm going to say.
Okay, I'll add one thing. It's baseball games, football games. It was the Olympics. It's music award programs.
Yes.
You will see how dark presentations are. And many people are not familiar with the symbols that are used. But once you start to get yourself acclimated toward those symbols, you'll start to see that this is exactly what they're doing, exactly what Pamela is saying that they're doing. It's happening.
And they're coming out with it now.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming out and saying that they work for the dark side. They work for Baphomet. They've given their soul to Satan. They're very proud of it. So it isn't as hidden as it was before. You don't have to look as deeply, but we need to know about this. We need to know about the unseen. We cannot afford to be prey any longer to predators, because we're not going to make it if we don't realize it.
There's an interview that Bob Dylan did years ago. It's on YouTube, and I don't remember what the title of the interview was, but I'm sure if you go in and you do a search on Bob Dylan unseen forces, one of the questions that was posed to Bob Dylan was his longevity. And Dylan responds with unseen forces as part of his answer. And interestingly enough, the person asking him the question did not follow up. It was as if he never said it, but it was stunning. And Dylan did say it. He admitted to it. So I suggest, if you can, folks, go onto YouTube or Google, look up, do a search on Bob Dylan, Unseen Forces. That should get you to that video and take a listen to it. Very, very interesting.
One of my husband's, people he looks to for advice is no longer in the body. It's Frank Zappa. And when Zappa was asked, what advice do you give a musician? He said, number one, always, always be in control of your work.
Right.
Don't ever sign with a company. Don't ever give up control, because it'll be something that you don't want it to be.
Right.
And he was a very wise person. And I'm looking at a painting of him right now on my husband's studio wall. And he does come and help my husband, by the way. His spirit comes. And I appreciate that. But he was a very wise person. And all people think of when you say Frank Zappa is, oh, well, that long-haired druggie, But the thing about it is people don't look further. They don't look at what's really going on. He gave advice to leaders of countries about things that people don't understand and don't know. He was a political person, but he was political in a quiet way.
Yeah.
And he knew what to do, and he was a success. And now the people that gave his advice, that took the advice he gave, are very successful. And you don't see them getting blown away at 27.
No. And one of his best quotes was, let me see if I get this right, government is the entertainment division of the military-industrial complex.
That is correct. That is correct.
It's a great quote.
Love it. It is. And you know what? It's very, very true.
Absolutely, it's true.
It's very, very true. And the entertainment world has become a pawn of this other world that is moving the pieces around, the puzzle pieces around.
Absolutely.
And so when you look at people that you say, my God, why didn't they make it big? Well, now you understand why. And my husband's a musician, and he was on the road for a while, and it's every high school, college person that wants to make it big. But once you find out how it works and what's really going on, you say, oh, I'm so grateful I was spared that. I'm glad I never got into that.
And today, it's a lot easier to do it on your own. It really is, to self-publish yourself, either whether you're an author or you're doing music. I mean, look, you're not going to make $1 gazillion, but you know what? You retain your creativity.
Right.
Right.
Well, and you have to do that. And that was the big thing that Frank Zappa said. And, Steve Vai is very, very successful. And he's a He's a whole human being.
Yes.
And he took his advice.
Yeah.
And look at him. He's a very, very wealthy, sane person. So,
the other person that got it, not to go into this, was John Lennon. Lennon, it was he was very outspoken about what was going on too.
Right, right. Well, we don't know what all happened to them, John Lennon and the people, but they certainly took him out. We do know that.
Yeah.
And so, all right. The next thing I would like to touch on is GMOs. Now, I'm not going to go into it at great depth, but stuff is going on in the in like Facebook and Twitter and all that to get behind the labeling issue. I always respond with, we don't need labeling. We need a ban on GMOs and boycotting of Monsanto products. Do people know who Monsanto is? Monsanto is the creator, and I hate using that word, the maker of Agent Orange. Anybody that's old enough to know Vietnam knows how Agent Orange has killed that country and also damaged our soldiers and the people. The people that made Agent Orange is Monsanto. They are a chemical poison bioweapon company. Hear me and do your research. Why would we have them involved in any way with our food? Why? What do you expect from someone who is in the business of chemically killing everything? The forests, the earth, the people, and we put them in charge of our seeds, which is our future food, and we put them in charge of processed foods, and now canned food, all food, our farms, how we process meat. These people are killers. Why are we doing that? Why play their game like voting for red or blue? Why are you wanting labeling? Ban Monsanto. Ban it. 30 plus countries are smarter than us. Of course, most people would look down on them. Oh, they're not as smart as us. We've got this and this and this and this. They've been smart enough to get rid of the killers, and they banned. 30 plus people have banned Monsanto and all GMOs. If this does not fit as part of the puzzle against all life, I want you to tell me what is.
Well, the GMOs are a huge, huge problem, Pamela. We were talking in the first hour about how what people are ingesting is creating all kinds of mind-body problems.
Right.
And GMOs are a huge component of this. And at the very least, what it has been proven that GMOs do is they create new allergens. And it's not a mystery to figure out why it is that all of a sudden, all of the prescription allergy medication, like Claritin and some of the others, became over the counter.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the timing was just impeccable, colossal. So with the advent of more and more GMO and these allergens being created, well, they had to make quote unquote allergy medication a lot easier, a lot cheaper to get a hold of. Now, when I think back as a kid, and maybe, you can do this with me. I mean, do you remember all these people running around with allergies all the time?
I remember seeing one person that had asthma, but no allergies.
Yeah.
But now many, many, many millions of kids have asthma.
Yeah.
And many, many, many millions of all people, all ages have allergens. Have you ever heard of, now I can't think of it. It starts with an S. It's where they can't eat wheats or any of that kind of stuff. And that was just invented a couple of years ago. I mean, that never happened before. Why is that? It's because of GMOs, and it's because of the poison to our food.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a serious thing. It is very, very serious. And it's a huge piece of the puzzle to destroy all life.
Right. Because when your body takes this stuff in, folks, your body doesn't know what to do with it. It's
That's
not natural.
that's right.
So your body takes it in, your body's looking at it and saying, well, okay, I don't know what this is. I'm going to try to figure out what it is and see if I can do something with it. So the body exerts enormous amounts of energy that's better spent doing other stuff for you, maybe making you more energized and just feeling a lot better. But no, what's happening is your body is investing time and energy to try to figure out what to do with these poisons. And this is why people are walking around with the allergies and then they have pain and they're feeling apathetic and they're feeling depressed and they have a cloudy mind and so on and so on and so on. And the first thing, Pamela, that I tell folks when I have this discussion is before you go to the doctor and have the doctor prescribe another pill for you to take, please take a look at what you are consuming. Take a look at your diet.
That's right.
Because much of what you're complaining about, much of what you're putting yourself through will go away if you just simply change your diet.
You will remember this because I don't remember names, but who was it that said, let your medicine be your food and your food be your medicine?
Oh, that's a good
one. It doesn't matter who said it, but it
Yeah.
was somebody long, long ago, but that is so true. And the thing is, you cannot eat from these processed foods. You can't do it. And because the woman is out of the home working, there's nobody at home cooking. So everybody's either eating out or eating processed foods. Because why? Because of survival. There's no way that you can make a 4-hour meal that women used to put on in the morning and then do the laundry and then back in the house and do all these other things and come back, check on it. No, you can't do that anymore because there's nobody home. People only come to their home to spend the night. And so we're being poisoned every way you can be poisoned. And one of the ways is in our food. And that's very good advice to tell people to look at their food because most of what people eat is not food. In 1988, Lay's potato chips came out with something that was going to allow you to eat potato chips as much as you want. And this oil or something that they put in there was just going to push it right straight through and it wouldn't do anything to your body. And I don't know the name of it and I don't remember any of that.
Actually, I remember that. I don't recall what they called it, but I do remember that.
One of my spirit friends, meaning a person not in physical form, said to me, do not ever, ever take that or consume that. Said it is not food. And I didn't know then what I know now about food. And of course, we didn't have back then what we have now as far as the attacking and the GMO and all. But what he told me was it would be like eating a styrofoam cup. Chew it up and you can swallow it, but your body doesn't know what to do with it because there's nothing living in there. There's nothing in there that has anything organic in it.
Right.
And all it's going to do is hurt you. And I never ate that. And I don't think it went anywhere. I think it just disappeared. They didn't use it anymore. Do you think I'm right?
No, I think you're absolutely right.
But I was so glad that I had the help I had because I may have tried that, Yeah. And I don't eat much in the way of potato chips, but I do eat some the oven baked ones,
Yes.
They don't taste very good, but 4 or 5 with a sandwich or something, is good. But I remember that, and I wanted to tell that story way back in 1988. I can remember the house I was in and the room I was in when my spirit friend said, do not consume this. It is like eating a styrofoam cup. And your body doesn't know what to do with it. And that's what all of this is. And you talked about it, Mike. Your body doesn't know what to do with it. And so it should be building up your immune system.
Exactly.
But instead, it's expending all this energy on trying to figure out what in the heck have you just put in here and what do I do with it and where does it go? And all of this stuff, and it just clogs up our system.
And what happens is the result is it manifests in problems and health issues. That's what people have
Right.
to understand. You just can't eat that stuff and expect that you're going to be healthy. So
Right.
it's going to manifest in feeling depressed or feeling sick or having very low energy, having as Pamela mentioned, your immune system decrease. That's the most important one.
And that's the one that we're really in a lot of trouble about right
Yes,
now.
that's exactly right.
And the reason why is because we've had at least 3 generations that have eaten this crap that has nothing to do with food that they call food. I mean, all you have to know is people that have a hamburger and French fries from any of the fast food places, it never molds, it doesn't disintegrate, the animals won't eat it, insects won't eat it. It's not food.
Right.
And yet people go through, you can drive by and see people in the drive-through line 24 hours a day. And it's not food.
It's not
So
food,
they're
yeah.
hungry. Their body is saying, give me food. And they give it this crap that has nothing to do with food.
And we should also throw in aspartame while we're talking about it, because that is wicked, wicked stuff. And that's in all your diet sodas. It's in your chewing gum. It's in many, 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 many products. So you should be looking at the ingredient label on whatever it is that you're eating. And, just change your diets, folks, because I'm telling you, I know I'm repeating myself, but a lot of the ailments that many people are suffering through will go away.
That's right. And if we eat food that is actually of this earth, our bodies know what to do with it. But when you put things in there that are chemicals and foreign substances, and they're not organic in any way, not meaning no poisons, I mean not meaning ever alive.
Yeah.
They're not life. So if you want to die, eat dead stuff. If you want to be alive, eat alive stuff.
Yeah, I always love that argument where they say, well, genetically engineered food is as good as organic. I'm like, what?
Yeah, right.
That doesn't even make sense.
I know. I know. I heard something this week of a guy coming out and saying that it has been proven that a little bit of mercury is good for a human being.
That's ridiculous.
How much BS is that, and who's believing that is
Right.
what I want to know.
Right.
But an authority, this was a doctor and a scientist, 3 degrees behind his name, and I wonder how much he got paid for saying that. But it doesn't take very much intellect to understand that type heavy metal is not good for you.
Well, it's the same knuckleheads that say that fluoride, which now has been declared a neurotoxin by the Lancet, which is a Harvard journal, is a neurotoxin, yet these folks will come out and tell you, no problem, it's good for your teeth, don't
Right.
worry about fluoride. Fluoride's evil.
Fluoride does a lot of things. It eats your brain, number one. Number two, it makes a person docile, so they don't even have the drive to do anything.
Well,
they don't have the drive to stand up for themselves or to do anything.
Calcifies
And
your pineal gland.
it does, and that is a big one. I've done a show on that. You should go to the archives, people, on puremomentum.net and take a look for the show on visualization and the pineal gland, because that is a huge feature of being a human being. You need to go within to find out what is truth. And the way you do that is with your heart and your pineal gland. And your pineal gland, why do you think they call it a third eye? Because it sees, it knows things, it sees things, and we need it. And it is, most people's pineal gland is calcified and is like a rock. And all of your other organs in your body are very moist and malleable. And if your liver gets hard, you're dead. If your heart gets hard, you're dead. So your pineal gland is like a rock. And what happens is we don't see things correctly. And it's not difficult to get this back to a moist, malleable state. And how you do that is by visualization and imagining. Please go and listen to my show on that. It's very important. And I'm so glad we got to touch on that a little bit. But know what you're eating And just because somebody says this is organic, don't you dare believe it, because they've changed the rules on us. And organic food actually can have GMOs in it and lots of poisons. Just like they are allowing them to call beef organic as long as the last stage they eat organic food, like organic corn or not poisoned or whatever. But all their whole life up to that point, they just got all the shots and all the GMO in their feed and all that sort of thing. But the last, I don't know what the times are, but I studied that when I was looking at what was happening to our farming community.
Well, that's right. And there was an article I put up on the blog today, with regard to Kellogg and who makes the Kashi brand.
Right, I know. Wasn't that horrible?
Right. So I would suggest that you can go to my blog, or you can just look up Kellogg cereals, double dose of GMO, pesticides, and antibiotics, and take a look at how much deception is going on. It's really, really, because what's really, really amazing about this and really sad is the fact that they really have no regard for humanity. People even people are trying to do the right thing. Even the people who are trying to change their diet and say, okay, I know I've got to eat better, so I'm going to eat more organic food and whatever it may be. It's just they just, even that is a deception, like as you were saying.
Yep.
It's really, it's just amazing. It really is.
We're very fortunate because we have found an Amish store, and we go there and we get our food there, and we know where it's coming from, and the food is labeled which farm it came from. Now, if we did that, can you imagine Walmart putting where the food came from? And you could say, oh yeah, that's one of the things that was part of this plan. We were never meant in the natural order. We were never meant to have our food shipped to us from somewhere else. We were meant to eat local and to support our local farmers and whatnot. And the attack on farmers has been so calculated and so detailed that we have very few farmers, and there are very few people who know how to grow anything. And I have a great green thumb because I talk to the plants and they talk to me, but I'm not physically able to do that right now. So I've got to do something else. And so I was in my visualization work, I was asking for an Amish or Mennonite that I could buy things from. And do you know, within 5 days of me doing that work, a girl I used to work with, we were having a conversation and she mentioned this store it's about 35 miles from here. And I said, oh my gosh, let's go. Well, we got in the car and went, but they were closed. But at least I knew how to get there and whatnot. And now David and I go there often. And it isn't that much more. It's a little bit more, and it's a lot more driving, but at least we're getting real food.
Right.
So you've got to find places like this, people. And just because Walmart has a little section that says organic, don't buy it for a minute. It's probably not. And you have no way to verify it. And we even got some snacks that were like Cheetos and corn chips, and it had the label on it, who made it, and all the ingredients and whatnot. And there was no GMO or any of that stuff in it. And I do know that the government or the corporation doing business as our government has really been attacking this whole business about the Amish and the Mennonites to the point that many of them have left the country. But we've got to do this, even if it means spending more money and it being inconvenient and us driving a long way. It is really very, very important on so many levels to find the real organic food. And honestly, the only way I know to do it is to find someone that personally, you can look at them and you can talk to them and get a feeling if they're lying to you or not about their organic farming. Well, Mike, we're out of time. And I didn't even get through half of the material I wanted to, but I'm real happy with what we did discuss. And I feel very good about the information we've gotten out there to stimulate our fellow human beings to process some of this information and look at it for yourself. Don't believe me and don't believe Mike. Don't believe anybody but yourself. Look it up and see if we're right. See what you need to do about it. And there's a way around all of this. It may not be easy and it may not be comfortable, but there's a way, and it's worth it. And it's never been more important than it is at this very moment. Well, Mike, thank you so much for being my special guest and for being my special friend. And I'm so happy that you're in the war on the right side, the correct side, the side that supports humanity and life in all its forms. I'm so glad to stand shoulder to shoulder with you and know that we're not alone in this battle. And we are in a battle, and I'm aware of it, and you're aware of it. And it's okay. It's okay that there's a battle. We may not win all the battles, but we're going to win the war. I know we are. And what I always say is that when we stand up in our humanity, we will get help. But we will not get help until we stand up. Nobody is going to come in and be our savior and our Messiah. That is a big fat lie to keep people from doing anything. So please research things and decide what you need to do. So thank you so much, Mike, for being here. I want to give out your websites again: Sage of Quay, blogspot.com, or sageofquay.com.
Right.
And
laboroflovemusic.com. That's where my album Leaving Dystopia is located. And also you can catch my radio shows on the Sage of Quay Radio Hour on my YouTube channel. And that's what it's called, the Sage of Quay Radio Hour.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Mike. You've just been wonderful. I appreciate you so much. Thank you, members, for being here. We appreciate you and could not do this without you. Thank you for your patience and your understanding. Certainly, we do appreciate it. This is Pamela Tartar. You've been listening to Factor 9 on Pure Momentum Network. Until next time, be as human as you can be. You can't be anything better. Bye for now.
Sometimes I feel so tired, but today I feel so wired. And I look through my crystal ball. All I see is that wall. So many people are standing still, drifting away. They lost their will. I just want to shake them and give them ears. Wake up, stop living in fear. You are human. You are a beautiful soul. You are one with creation. Come on, get up, let's go. Sometimes I feel so cheated, but today I won't be defeated. I cut the chains and I break free. Open your eyes and you will see. soul.